Hello, hello. Welcome to Thriving with Teriki. In this podcast, we thrive, we don't survive, and even if we've survived something, it is our season, and not only season, but it is our lifetime of thriving. I am Melanie Teriki, your host, and in this podcast, we really be diving into stories and lessons and just hearing out what God has done in people's lives and in my life as well, in terms of being an immigrant, being a foreigner in another country, but also being a young person and striving to succeed in your craft and in the things that God has put in your heart. So stick with me and we will move along this journey, and I can't wait to see what God has for all of us. So this is the first installment, and I will be giving you a bit of my story so that we understand where all this is coming from, as well as just set basis of what this podcast will look like. And so let's get right into it. So my name is Melanie Teriki. I am a Kenyan. I was born and raised in Kenya, specifically Eldoret and Nairobi, which is the capital city of Kenya. So I came to Australia last year, 2023, to study my master's, and studying my master's in strategic communication. I traveled all the way alone. My family is back home in Kenya, and I have a few siblings who are abroad as well, but not in Australia. And so at the beginning of my journey coming here, I remember I was really motivated. I had so much psych. I had so much psych for life, and I was ready to take life by its horns. And I remember landing, and God put a word in my heart, and he told me, I am giving you this land. And I opened up my hand and I told God, thank you for giving me this land. I will go in and I will conquer. Skr. Only 1 month later, I felt forsaken. I felt as though I didn't know what I was doing. I had no basis. I had like my cousin here. I had people to call out, yes, but not necessarily. It wasn't like home, right? Because I left my friends, I left my family, I left my siblings, I also left my partner back home. So it kind of felt lonely because the way I had built my life back home was very stable, if you may say. So I had finished my undergrad. I did my undergrad in Daystar University. I studied public relations. And so I had just graduated and I had just started working in a PR firm. I started as a social media manager, then branched out into being a business development manager in the business. It was a good experience, but not necessarily, it wasn't long. So I feel like I didn't quite dive into it that much. And so I went ahead to start my own business. I had experimented on quite a lot of businesses earlier in life, so it wasn't something new. And my mom is an entrepreneur, and so she really pushes for anything that looks like business. I love her. But so in her motivating me, I started a business where I was doing balloon decor. It was a very niche business because a lot of people do what is it called, event decor. So the full on providing seats, providing tables, providing cutlery, all of that. Then we go to the flowers, we go to the tents and all of that. But as for me, because also it was a one-man business. I hadn't hired anyone. Well, my siblings and my helpers. They would help me when like the load was too much, but ideally I was doing all the work alone. And so I decided to niche into balloons. And so I was doing a business, and it was doing really well in terms of helping me just earn money. It wasn't necessarily the biggest business out there, but I was stable. I was getting clients, and it was fun at the same time. And so I felt really fulfilled, as well as I had my friends. We had just moved out of school, and so we were all just trying to figure out life, and it felt amazing. And so once I graduated, my dad was like, think about masters, by the way. I said, sir, I've just arrived, what's going on? But he said, if you stop now, it might be harder to pick that up when you're older, so you can start by just going going to do your masters now when you're still young, when your mind is still fresh. And so I went ahead, and started applying to come to Australia. I actually didn't, there was no vision per se in terms of Australia. I think I would have gone anywhere, but Australia was the first thing that came to mind. And so I started applying for my visa. I didn't have a specific place in Australia or a specific school. I just know that I wanted to further my studies in communications because I love public relations, yes, but I felt like I didn't have such a basis for it. Like undergrad was just, we were just starting to understand like what the corporate world looks like, what public relation looks like, and voila, we had to go, we graduated. So I felt like I still needed to like dig deeper in that. And so over time I started realizing that no, not over time, but I now decided to apply into a course called strategic communication, and in another university it was called professional communication, which is basically an extensive public relations, but a combination of public relations, and I do have some elective units in marketing and all of that. And yeah, but basically it's about corporate communication and all of that. So I applied, and God really came through. It took a while for me. I don't know why it took a while, but by mid-year of, I started applying in January and I left by June. So it took a bit of time. But I guess, I don't know if that's everyone's experience in terms of timing. I know people who've had way shorter timelines or way longer timelines. So maybe I'm in the middle. But yeah, so I went ahead and started applying now for my visa and everything. And I flew out and I was so excited. I was ready to conquer the world. I was ready to, just enjoy myself. And my partner had been in Australia for 5 years. So it was really, in terms of adjusting, it wasn't too difficult because he would tell me, the whatnots and stuff. But I remember telling God, because I was thriving in Kenya, I was like, God, I pray that I also thrive in Australia. And because it's a first world country, it might be easier to do business and just enjoy myself in terms of either doing the same business I was doing or finding, places to just enjoy my craft and stuff. But then I came and life started looking a bit depressive. And so we started going to school, and the school was amazing because I loved the course I was doing. I was very intentional when picking it. It wasn't one of those things where like I'm bridging it just to come to Australia. It was actually something I wanted to study. And so I enjoyed school, but then on the work side of things, it was very difficult looking for a job. I don't know, there's something just about being a first time international student that it's like it just pushes away jobs. It's like employers don't look at you as a worthwhile potential employee. And so I got a bit depressed because back home life was different, right? But then here also I'm trying to take the burden off my parents because they were paying my school fees. Fortunately, I know it's such a blessing, but they were paying my school fees, so I was trying to take the load of them in terms of at least if I can sustain myself, food, whatever, like just the normal day-to-day things. I really wanted to get a job so that I can figure that out for myself. But then I was looking for jobs and nothing was coming through. And a lot of Africans here do disability support work, which is basically working in either nursing homes or working in someone's home where you take care of them. And so in the beginning, it was difficult to get into it because I didn't have the certification. So I decided to chart my own path. And because I love kids and I love early childhood development, I was like, why not be a babysitter? Like, I think, I don't know why. So I think I saw someone post on TikTok about how they were a babysitter, and I was like, interesting. Can I be a babysitter? And I started just researching on it, and I saw there were a website that you could apply in, or rather just put your experience or certifications. My experience was basically taking care of my auntie's kids or things like that, but it was still valid because they sort of needed you at least to know how to take care of kids. And luckily I had just gotten my first aid and CPR certificate, and the working with children's check, I had to look for that. My church helped me at the time, and yeah, so I just started working. And I started applying to homes, or rather to families, because ideally it's just the parents on the website looking for babysitters. So there's websites which bring together babysitters or nannies, as they call them, and parents. So you just keep finding each other out at your own convenience in terms of location, pricing, all of that. So I started doing that, and life really went up now, because ideally I was self-employed, and remember I had my own businesses back home. I think I've always had a knack for finding my way out of employment. I don't know, I still struggle with finding out, like, do I like employment or not, or do I like entrepreneurship or not? Like, I know I like entrepreneurship, but not necessarily to the extent of I haven't had a business that was necessarily that big. It was more so businesses just to for my upkeep. Does that make sense? And so that's what I was doing. And yeah, so I kept going. I kept looking for jobs, or rather, yes, jobs ideally, but like families and homes. But the craziest thing, which is such a God thing, is the fact that I never, all the jobs that I got or all the family that I worked with looked for me. And everyone that I looked for never got back to me. So it was so interesting, because it was like a pat in the back from God, just telling me, you know what, I'll sustain you. You know, you might, because I was looking in desperation, to be honest, and I was really struggling to find, because I was also afraid, because you're in a new country. I'm an African. I don't know if they have like insecurities about, would I call them insecurities, or like fear or whatever about it. So I wasn't sure how to navigate the space professionally. All I had was my genuine intention and my desire to sustain myself. So I did that, and I was able to at least loosen, or rather help my parents in terms of sustaining me. I just told them, okay, now I have sort of sustainable income coming in, so you can at least just pay my school fees for now, but if anything goes amiss, I'll just let you know. And so life went on, but then the place I was living wasn't very, it was a bit toxic. Affected my mental health quite a bit. I hadn't realized it until I was reflecting on it later. But then I decided to move houses. But then in the midst of moving houses, for some reason, I just lost all my gigs. Like, one family moved out of the country, another family didn't need my services anymore, another family, unfortunately, they said that they couldn't afford it anymore, um, because, well, most families here hire babysitters when it's holiday time or school time. Holiday time or school time? I think holiday time. No, actually, yeah, actually, yes, holiday time, because the kids are home, but now kids are going back to school. So they're like, yeah, I think we're doing the math and it's not possible. So that's what happened. And so I lost all my gigs, and I'm planning to move out. And I had thought that I'd paid my money forward, in terms of I had paid all the rent, but unfortunately I had paid backwards. So there was still rent to be paid. And I was like, oh my Lord, how are we going to do this? And I was raised up to be very independent. So unfortunately, I find it difficult to ask for help. So I just struggled to call back my parents and ask them to help me out. Also, looking for a place, God provided a place for me to live, and it was amazing. It was such amazing providence, because um, it's one of those miracle that you never expected it. And even coming to Australia, if you've watched my YouTube, one of my YouTube videos, I talk about how God provided a home without me knowing how I was going to, like, or rather where I was going to live here in Australia. So it was a beautiful experience. But yeah, all in all, after that, I found a place to live, and I borrowed money from my cousin and my partner and my brother. And I remember that, like, it's so interesting, because as much as these are people that are very close to my heart, I found it very difficult to ask for help at the time. And I kept telling myself, never again. I think that, I guess I didn't like that vulnerability, that financial vulnerability, if that makes sense. And so I just felt like, man, never again. Never again. But then fast forward to 2024, I now started looking for a solid job where I'm an employee because I had freelanced for so long, and I found a job in the disability sector finally with an amazing woman, and she took me in and trained me, and started working, and it was just lovely, thank God. And having steady income was such a blessing. Like, I thank God. Like, there was a time I was going to to sell. I thrift a lot. I love thrifting clothes, and so there's a time I just went to Salvos is a thrift store here in Australia, and so I just went there and bought clothes. I think they were like $100 if I'm not wrong, but there were so many clothes, and I remember almost crying because I was like, oh my Lord, this is the first time I've bought clothes and haven't felt guilty or scared of whether I'll be able to have my next meal or not, or whether I'll be able to pay my rent or not. And so yeah, that's why I moved in, and then God just put a desire in my heart to have interviews or host people whose stories are, inspiring in terms of they have charted their own path. Because ideally, I'm a creative, and so it's very hard for me to be boxed into a blueprint of work and whatever. And so I found it really difficult to just to keep the status quo, if anything, like to just do the same thing that everyone does every single time. And so I am on the hunt for business people, entrepreneurs, creatives, anyone really who is doing something outside the norm of what I was told when I was coming in terms of come, go to school, go to work, go home, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So that's basically what I will be doing for the next season if the Lord allows it. So I hope this really inspires you, if anything, to not give up as an international student, as a foreigner. And yeah, so I pray that the Lord will encourage all of us. I just wanted to tell you guys a bit of my story so that to just give context of who I am and what am I doing here on your screens or in your ears. And yeah, so yeah, I feel this like the story was a bit incomplete, but it's only because I'll be sharing more with more episodes to come. So I just wanted to build bases. And yeah, so let me know if you know anyone who you'd like to hear from who is a foreigner, doesn't have to be in Australia. Let me know who they are, text me on Instagram or TikTok. On Instagram, text me, DM me at Thriving with Teriki, and on TikTok, Teriki or Teriki Melanie. And yeah, or even under my YouTube comments, just type there and I will hunt them down. Well, not hunt them down like that, but I will search for them and just would love to hear their stories. I think it's amazing hearing people's stories because you see it now as possible rather than just being told textbook answers, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And thank you so much for joining me on this first installment of Thriving with Tariki. I will see you in the next one. Bye.